couple of weeks ago, I was speaking at the Chiang Mai SEO conference, and a lot of people came up to me afterwards and basically said, if I want to sell my business in 3 years or 2 years' time, what do I need to do now to get it ready? How do I need to prepare? Now, I'll caveat this answer by saying a lot of the people I spoke to were agency owners. Some of them were education business owners, so people who have an online course. And so the answer I give isn't necessarily going to be true for everyone, but I think it's still going to be insightful. And essentially, you have to think, okay, what is going to attract a buyer? So the first thing, which I've said a bunch of times before, is the business has to be able to function without you, and the more you can demonstrate that, the better. So what that really translates as is, if you can replace yourself before you want to sell, then fantastic, because then the seller's not asking, can this really sell, can this really function without you, because they can see it does. And if you build yourself out of a job now and you decide you don't want to sell, well, great, you've got some passive income, or you're free to go and launch another business or do something else with your time. So it's a kind of low risk thing to take on. Now, what does that actually mean? So when I sold Human Proof Designs, I spent probably 2 or 3 years building myself out of the business beforehand, and I didn't necessarily know I was going to sell, but I thought I'd probably like to sell one day. So I thought about what are all the things that are obstacles to that. And so some things were on a very micro granular level. For example, I wrote all of the blog posts, did a lot of content marketing, and I always wrote emails and so on. And I used to sign them as from Dom, and I would write I a lot in emails and blog posts. So I switched to saying we, and I would sign emails Dom and the HPD team, and sometimes just sign them the HPD team. I was the podcast host, and I realized, okay, I should probably take myself out of the podcast, because that's definitely going to be something that's going to make a seller, a potential buyer, nervous. And fortunately, I sucked at podcasting. So one of my team members, I had him on the podcast a few times as a guest, and he was way better than me. He was so natural. He had a great voice, great energy. I wouldn't say he had a voice for radio because that's a little bit of an insult, but he was just fantastic at it, and I could tell he wanted to do the podcast. So I just thought, okay, great, you do the podcast. The podcast will get better. If I never sell the business, the podcast has just got better. And he went out and landed great guests and asked great questions, and it freed me up to focus on other things. And then when it came to sell the business, he went with the business, and it wasn't a problem for the buyer. So the other thing you might think about is sales calls, biz dev. Are you doing marketing yourself? Are you closing sales yourself? If it's a course, are you teaching it yourself? That's not necessarily a problem if it's all like pre-recorded, but if you're teaching cohorts and things, then you should probably start bringing on coaches to replace yourself. Are you doing all the social media? Are you, is your personal brand a large part of the reason that people buy from you? And all of these are really solvable problems, but the more you solve them before a potential sale, the better. And aside from that, there's not really a lot else to it from the kind of founder alliance. Now, the other things are about diversification of the business and reliability of the business. So, if you're an agency, get as much retainer revenue or recurring revenue as you can. Don't just have one successful Facebook funnel that drives all of your sales. Don't just offer one service. Sure, a buyer might come in and see that you just offer one service and think, oh, great, we can add 10 services to this. There's so much room to grow. But yeah, I think more people are going to be worried about that. I think most good buyers are less excited about growth opportunities and more nervous about the business dying. At least that's how I approach it. And so start thinking to yourself, where are the risks in the business? Where are the Where can I diversify more? Where can I explore other opportunities? All of these things like that. And then when it comes to the subject I was talking about earlier about hiring people to replace you, again, sometimes people are a little bit wary of that because, okay, maybe a business is, maybe it's making you 20K a month profit, and you think, cool, I could hire someone to replace me for 10K. So, I'm going to be accepting less profit. Sure, in the short term, but maybe by the time you're ready to sell, you've got that profit back up to 20K because hopefully for 10K, you've hired someone who's really good at their job, maybe even better than you are. And even if that's not the case, you're going to get a higher multiple, or having that person in place is going to be the difference between whether or not you can sell it in the first place. So, I think if you're afraid of hiring someone to build yourself out of the job because you're going to end up with less profit, you've probably got some limiting beliefs that you need to get over. But yeah, that's it. If you've got any other questions, you can always reach out, reply to me under this video. Contact me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm out there and I like chatting.